Greetings. I'm John Studebaker. Welcome back. This is week 5, Hinduism. And we have a special guest joining us today. We have Dr. David Cashin, a professor at Columbia International University. He's joining us. He'll be teaching this session on Hinduism. He's got a lot to offer, and I'm really looking forward to what he can provide for our course. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cashin, and we'll start out today with his short introduction to Hinduism. Thanks, Dr. Cashin.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate that very much. Excited to have a chance to talk about Hinduism today. I want to begin by noting some of the ways in which Africa can have a very powerful ministry in India. And I want to say that because I'm encouraging missions and missionaries, and one of the great sending bases of the church today in terms of sending out missionaries is Africa. And frankly, I want to make the point that in many ways, Africans are better prepared for reaching out to Hindus than your typical Westerners. Part of the reason for that is Hinduism at its core is a belief in the spirit world. In spirits, both upper, higher deities, lower deities, demons, angels, fairies. There are all kinds of different spirit beings within Hinduism. And African traditional religions also believe in a spirit world quite actively. And so Africans who've come out of that background have a much more visceral understanding of what's going on within Hinduism than I think your average American. And I'm really excited about the idea of Africa sending its missionaries to India. So that gives me my one scripture verse to start off today, Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. This is what the scripture teaches us. The spirit world is real, and it is involved in a war with God and with the saints. And part of our task is to take the gospel to those places that are dominated by this kind of idea. And I found this one picture here that just sort of illustrates the sort of battle between good and evil spirit being forces that is very typical of Hindu thinking. Just a couple other points that I'd like to make. There are many other similarities between Hinduism and ATR, that is, African traditional religions. And one of the things that's most important about that similarity is, if you can think about it, Hinduism doesn't really exist as a religion. Oh, yes, it exists. But in fact, the name Hindu is a misnomer. It's not a religious term. It's a geographical term. So when you are looking at Hinduism, you're looking not at one religion, but literally a conglomeration, an amalgamation of thousands of different religions that may have certain things in common. And somehow this got baptized because Hindus were people who lived beyond the Indus River. So the Indus living people were the Hindus. It's a geographical term, originally invented by the Greeks way back when Alexander the Great invaded India. So you have really an amalgam of thousands of different religions. And if you could name a religion of Africa, what we call African traditional religions, you might just call them Africanism, which would be a very similar term to Hinduism. Basically, you're describing a geographical region. And there are many other similarities that I won't go into today, but I'm excited about Africa sending missionaries to India. I think there is some huge potential. Now, I do want to mention that there is one hindrance, and that is, quite frankly, 3,000 years of Hindu racism. In India, you have this concept of caste. It's very ingrained in the social structure. And the caste system basically identifies people on a scale of closer to the gods and lower than the gods. And part of that is fairly racist. That is to say that the lighter your skin color, the more likely that you are a higher caste person in India. The darker your skin color, the more you're a lower caste person. And I know that some of my African-American friends who have served as missionaries in India have really struggled with that racist kind of attitude. So I just mentioned that briefly. There's a wide open door, I think, for African missionaries to India, but you need to be aware that dark skin color often is associated with racist concepts. So that's a challenge. But I know a number who have broken through those barriers and had very interesting ministries amongst the Hindus of India. So we'll stop there and get ready for our first presentation in a moment. John, you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Cashin. It's a great introduction to Hinduism, and I enjoyed that. It was very informative. Especially, let me just follow up with a quick question. And I appreciate the fact that some of our African brothers and sisters are taking the mandate to go into all the world and preach the gospel. And yet I suspect that some of them might be able to have a ministry with Hindus even in Africa. Is that the case? Are there some Hindus in Africa that they might rub shoulders with?
Yeah, if you go down, South Africa has a large Hindu population. East Africa, many of the countries there have Hindu populations, and they are generally speaking merchants living in the larger cities as well as along the coasts. So yeah, I don't know the exact number of Hindus living in Africa, but it's not insubstantial. It's a large group.
Okay, that's very helpful. And last question is regarding the chart here of I see how you have, and I'm somewhat familiar with these castes. The top three are the twice born groups, and then you have the Shudras and the Untouchables. Could you talk briefly about those castes so just we understand the distinctions, and particularly the Untouchables, which I've always found fascinating?
Yeah, basically the Untouchables would be people who have no caste at all. And these are considered to be people outside, in some ways, the Hindu system. And by the way, that's one of the main reasons that the group that has converted to Christianity most rapidly has been the Untouchables, because they are an oppressed group. They are usually given the kinds of jobs that nobody else wants, sweepers, latrine cleaners, people, and very much have been looked down upon. I will say India has banned that kind of racist thinking, at least in terms of actual structures in the country, but as a social ethos, it's still very, very strong. So Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, these three groups are the twice born. They probably were lighter skinned Central Asian Aryans who came down and invaded India. And as they pushed the native population towards the south, there came to be this racial division, and it's been there since about 1000 BC. So you have light skin and dark skin being one of the major ways of determining different caste structures. Also practices. The lower castes, the Shudras, Vaishyas, and Untouchables, these are castes that will eat meat. And of course, for that reason, are considered impure or unclean. So there's other kinds of social aspects. The upper castes also use a lot more Sanskrit. Their language is more Sanskritized, that is, using sort of the holy language of India, whereas the Vaishyas, Shudras, and Untouchables, generally speaking, have a lower level of education, and they use much more local dialects rather than more Sanskritized aspects of language.
Great. Thank you. That's very helpful. So great. Well, let's take a break, and we'll come back and we'll have our content video where we walk through the essential worldview of Hinduism. So we'll see you on that next video. So we're going to pause this one now. Okay. I'm just going to end this Zoom meeting. And what I'd like to do, David, is probably going to take about 5 minutes. I want to receive the video and I want to just make sure that the quality is good. I did not have this on my hotspot, which I kind of intended to. I don't know if that'll matter because it's been on our regular house internet, which is a little weaker. So are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, so let me end the meeting. Why don't we come back on here in about 5 minutes after I get a chance to just check the quality?
Okay, should
And
I then click on your link and just come right back in that way?
Come back right back in 5 minutes. I think that'll be enough time for this to process through. All right,
I'll stop the
I'll see you
share.
then.
I'll leave right now. Thank you.
Okay, see you then. Yeah.